K-12 English Curriculum Guide. A curriculum guide is a well-structured document that delineates the philosophy, goals, objectives, pedagogical practices, instructional materials, and assessments that comprise a particular educational program. It also provides an articulation of what students should know and be able to do, as well as support to teachers in selecting how to achieve these goals. The foundations of the K-12 English curriculum are the theories of language teaching, theories of language teaching and acquisition, and theories of language. These theories have spared 5 components of the language teaching process that include spiral progression, integration, interaction, contextualization, and construction. These components guard effective use of language in 3 major applications of the macro skills in terms of understanding cultures, processes and strategies, and understanding language. The intricately intertwined and integrated listening, speaking and viewing, reading, viewing and responding, writing and representing promote the same outcome, which is thinking. It enables the students to make meaning through language. The main goals of the English curriculum are then achieved, honing communicative competence and multi-literacies among learners. The purpose of assessment is to measure the effectiveness of the curriculum's safeguarding components and applications. It gives the essential feedback to establish whether or not the learner's communication abilities and multi-literacies have been fully developed. As a result, the primary objectives are satisfied. The principles and guidelines of an effective language arts and multi-literacies curriculum. All languages are interrelated and mutually interdependent. Language learning and acquisition is a lifetime process that begins at birth and continues throughout one's life. Learning necessitates the presence of meaning. Students learn about language and how to use it effectively through interaction with others and study of books. Language acquisition and learning is an active process that begins at birth and continues throughout life. Students improve their language skills by putting what they have learned into new and more difficult settings with growing sophistication. They think about and use prior information to broaden and improve their language and comprehension. Students enhance their language fluency and competency by learning and integrating new language structures into their repertoire, which they subsequently use in a range of circumstances. Learning requires meaning. People learn when they apply what they already know to comprehend what is new. Teachers should begin with what students already know and utilize it to teach new concepts for learners to utilize language to compare new events and information to previous knowledge, experiences, and beliefs. Learners learn about language and how to use it effectively through their engagement and study of text. Text refers to any type of written, spoken, or visual communication that involves language. Students learn about language through a wide range of texts, from quick interactions to extensive and intricate forms of writings. The study of specific text is a means to an end, rather than a goal in itself. For learners to accomplish the intended results of language, learners learn to develop their own text as well as engage with the writings created by others. Successful language learning involves viewing, listening, speaking, reading, and writing activities. Language learning should involve a variety of tactics and activities that help students focus on meaning as well as accuracy. Language learning involves recognizing, accepting, valuing, and building on students' existing language competence, including the use of non-standard forms of the language, and extending the range of language available to students. Language acquisition help students develop functional and critical literacy skills. They learn to govern and comprehend the target language in society valued and rewarded conventions, as well as to reflect and critically evaluate their own and others' language. An effective language arts and multi-literacies curriculum satisfies the following principles: develops thinking and language through interactive learning, develops communicative competence and critical literacy, draws on literature in order to develop students' understanding of their literary heritage, draws on informational text and multimedia in order to build academic vocabulary and strong content knowledge, develops students' oral language and literacy through appropriately challenging learning, emphasizes writing arguments, explanatory or informative texts and narratives, provides explicit skill instruction in reading and writing, builds on the language, experiences, knowledge, and interests that students bring to school, nurtures students' sense of common ground in using language for communication as present or future global citizens to prepare them to participate in school and civic life, and assesses and reflects the student's ability to interpret or communicate in the target language. The language arts and multi-literacies curriculum's ultimate goal is to produce graduates who can use language conventions, principles, strategies, and skills in interacting with others, understanding and learning other content areas, and fending for themselves in whatever field of endeavor they choose. Communicative competence is a synthesis of fundamental grammatical principles, knowledge of how language is used in social circumstances to fill communicative functions, and knowledge of how utterance and communicative function knowledge may be merged according to discourse rules. Communicative competence is classified into following competencies. Grammatical or linguistic competence is acquiring phonological rules, morphological words, syntactic rules, semantic rules, and lexical elements. Sociolinguistic competence is the acquisition of pragmatic characteristics of various speech activities in social situations, such as cultural values, norms, and other sociocultural conventions. They include the conversation's context and topic, the participant's social position, gender, age, and other factors that influence speech styles and registers. Discourse competence is the understanding of the norms that govern the cohesiveness and coherence of diverse sorts of discourse. Social linguistic norms of usage and discourse rules are essential in interpreting utterances for social meaning, especially when the literal meaning of utterance does not immediately lead to the speaker's goal. Strategic competence is the capacity to adjust for breakdown using verbal and nonverbal strategies such as self-correction, while also boosting communication efficacy through identifying discourse structure, activating background knowledge, contextual guessing, and tolerating ambiguity. Multi-literacies recognize the existence of several forms of literacy in culture. These include both traditional text-based literacy exercises and new literacy practices based on popular culture materials such as films. Professional literacy relates to literacy for school or workplace, whereas social literacy refers to how we connect and exchange meaning in our community. There are 4 components to the program. Each component is critical to the learner's capacity to communicate successfully in a language, resulting in communicative competence and multi-literacies in their mother tongue, Filipino, and English. The first component represents the learning processes that will influence language acquisition and learning. It outlines how language learning occurs and so serves as a set of guiding principles for language teachers. Language teachers must adhere to the 6 language teaching principles in order for language acquisition and learning to be efficient. These beliefs illustrate how language evolved naturally. Spiral progression. Skills, grammatical items, structures, and various types of text will be taught, updated, and reviewed at increasing level of difficulty and sophistication. As a consequence, students will be able to progress from basic to advanced levels of language usage. Interaction. Language learning will take place in a conversational atmosphere. Activities that simulate real-life events with varying language demands will be employed to help students communicate with others and improve their sociability skills. Integration. The areas of language acquisition, receptive skills, productive skills, grammar, and vocabulary will be taught in an integrated way, along with the use of relevant print and non-print sources to provide varied perspectives and significant connections. Various types of integration can take place, either implicitly or explicitly. Learner-centeredness. The learner are crucial to the teaching learning process. Differentiated education will be offered depending on the student's needs, skills, and interests. Effective pedagogies will be used to engage youngsters and support their language development. Contextualization. Learning tasks and activities will be developed to help students learn the language in authentic and relevant circumstances. Lessons, for example, will be arranged around learning objectives, a topic, or a text style to assist students in efficiently using associated language skills, grammatical item structures, and vocabulary in spoken and written language to match the purpose, audience, context, and culture. Construction. Making sense is essential for language learning and usage. Learning objectives and activities will be designed to provide students time to reflect and respond to concepts and information. Learners will be provided with sufficient scaffolding so that they can fulfill their full cognitive, emotional, and psychomotor potential and become independent learners who are good meaning consumers and builders. Component 2 addresses the knowledge and skills needed for appropriate language usage that will be acquired through language arts. The macro skills of the language are useful in three ways: understanding of cultures, understanding language, and processes and strategies. They are the knowledge and skill domains essential for efficient language usage as represented by language macro skills. Understanding cultures. Students are exposed to numerous civilizations across the world, including their own, via learning language through text types and literary appreciation. Learners gain sociolinguistic and sociocultural information which they can apply to their language usage. Understanding language. Learners utilize their knowledge of the language system to create sense and produce meaning. When they engage with a range of text to make sense, kids learn to comprehend the patterns and rules of the language. They use their knowledge and skills by developing their own spoken, written, and visual communications. Process and strategies. Learners select from a repertoire of processes and techniques depending on their understanding on how language works for a range of purposes in a variety of situations. They consider how they use language and apply a variety of linguistic strategies based on their goal, context, and audience. Language is used by them to deal with new ideas, resolve challenges, and solve problems. Component 3 demonstrates the interconnectedness and interrelationships of the language macro skills and development of thinking abilities that allow pupils to generate sense via language. Abilities, grammatical elements, structures, and various sorts of text will be taught and reviewed and progressively higher levels of difficulty and sophistication. Students can graduate from fundamental level to higher degrees of language usage using this approach. Component 4 describes the language arts and literacy curriculum's holistic evaluation, which provides a feedback on its efficacy to students, instructors, school officials, and curriculum authors. Holistic assessment refers to the continuous collection of information on many characteristics of a child from various sources with the purpose of providing qualitative and quantitative feedback to aid and steer the child's growth. Characteristics of assessment: proximity to actual language use and performance, actual communication functions rather than activities with little or no inherent communicative value should be focus of assessment processes. These exercises are based on true performance in realistic settings that the learner is likely to encounter in everyday life. A holistic review of language. The interdependence of many language properties such as phonology, grammar, and vocabulary, among others, cannot be overlooked in evaluation systems. The four language skills, listening, speaking, reading, and writing, are also viewed as part of a larger totality. Integrative view of learning. The evaluation process aims to capture the whole set of skills and abilities possessed by the learner. It evaluates linguistic ability in the context of a certain subject. The evaluation methodologies are based on the assumption that many aspects of a learner's life, both academic and personal, are critical to the development of language proficiency and should be disregarded. Developmental appropriateness. Assessment strategies provide expectations that are appropriate for the learner's cognitive, social, and academic development. This component of assessment makes it particularly useful for second language learners who come to diverse cultural backgrounds and may have had unusual educational experiences. Multi-referencing. Assessment comprises gathering information about the learner from a variety of sources and methods. Alignment of language and literacy domains. This column contains the integrated language art domains, while this row shows the 5 sub-strands, which are listening, speaking, reading, writing, and viewing. The first domain, the oral language. When students are conversing or communicating, they speak and listen. Therefore, this domain focuses to develop students' speaking and listening skill or ability. And in return, listening and speaking skill development help to improve students' oral language. Phonological awareness. Phonology is all about sounds. Students use their ears to segregate sounds that they hear. This domain has something to focus in students' listening skill. That is why it is only the listening column that has the check mark in this specific domain. Lastly, the vocabulary development domain. This domain focuses to develop the 5 sub-strands. It is because these 5 sub-strands contribute to the development of vocabulary. The alignment of language and literacy domains show that language learning is a two-way process. To have greater control in language is to develop these 5 competencies, which are speaking, listening, writing, reading, and viewing. In return, when these competencies are well developed, students are expected to acquire the said domains effectively. Content standard and performance standard. Content standards are broad declarations that describe specific content areas that students in each grade level should master. They define each subject's corpus of knowledge. For example, in earth science, a content requirement for 6th grade science students may be students will comprehend the implications of the relative positions of the earth, moon, and sun. Curriculum standards or subject standards are other names for them. Expectations for education, evaluation, and student work are referred to as performance standards. These include content standards, which specify the amount of work needed to demonstrate conformity with the standards. Performance standards distinguish and specify the skills necessary for problem solving, thinking, communicating, and linking with other information. They provide verification to all constituencies that students have met the subject requirements. Performance standards distinguish and specify the skills necessary for problem solving, thinking, communicating, and linking with other information. If you like this video, don't forget to give thumbs up, click the subscribe and hit the notification bell button to always get the latest update from this channel.